The Cabinet Minister responsible, George Eustace, put it like this. He said, I want to blend the kind of old traditional practices my grandfather used on our farm with modern technology and payment practices of the 21st century post-Brexit England. And don't forget, this is just England that it refers to. Well, there's something of a pattern being established here. 2 weeks ago, we saw a massive green programme rolled out, a green revolution, the government called it. Tonight, they're calling this the biggest changes for at least 50 years to English agriculture. And that they will be, should they come to pass, and should they come to pass on the pretty tight timetable of 7 years. Now, farmers are just like anybody else. They quite reasonably follow the money. They're no different in that respect. So the money is going to be very different from the old CAP, the Common Agricultural Policy of the EU, to this, where I think it's fair to say we're completely redefining farming into stewardship of the environment and nature and wildlife, as well as producing potatoes, beans, beef and all the rest of it. Well, it's quite easy to put a price on those latter commodities. Very difficult indeed on the former, how we pay people to look after our land, and it is our land, of course. So that's the problem. So a lot in terms of vision today, and it is radical, not a lot so much in terms of the details of how we actually get there. And that's where the scepticism is amongst farmers, who recognise, like all of us, we must move towards sustainability in all aspects of our life and culture. This is a view, then, from the heart of the Lake District.
Public money for public good, redefining English farming from food production to food production with wildlife protection. Sounds great, but delivery and detail are everything, as they'll tell you here in Cumbria's Matterdale. Farmer and literary sensation James Rebanks checking his Herdwick ewes this morning, and they're top.
If they get this scheme right, this could be a brilliant thing for people like me that want to do the right thing. This can enable us to do the capital works, the fencing, the whatever it takes to create those places and to manage them properly, and hopefully to earn some money by producing these public goods that everybody talks about.
So the EU handouts are gone. The government wants subsidy-free English farming in 7 years, paying farmers instead for this. Volunteers tree planting today to combat climate change.
Sounds like a great big gesture, and sounds like, you know, all the farmers are going to be better off and the natural world's going to be better off. But it is just, it comes down to the crunch. You know, people still have to produce sheep, beef, pork, chicken or whatever. People still want to eat it. And, you know, are we going to be able to do it and deliver all this, you know, wonderful conservation? I don't know.
For James Rebanks, vindication, being paid at last after the years of trying to farm sustainably when the system was against him.
This river that used to be in a sort of man-made canal, we've let it back into the floodplain. We work with the local Rivers Trust and other river restoration charities. We're creating a sort of flooded wood pasture there. You can see some of the land in the valley bottom with some of our neighbours is barely ever grazed, so it's sort of recovering as wilder land.
But how do you price that? Who inspects the work? The government will soon begin a large-scale farm consultation to search for answers, or, say some, select the answers it wants to find. It all makes setting the price for milk or lamb look simple, no matter how vital this work is. So as direct payments to farms are phased out, in will come the Environmental Land Management Scheme. Trouble is, nobody yet knows quite what it is, how it works, what it means.
How are you doing, big man? Are you all right?
One farmer said today the only definite thing is cutting payments, which leaves the Farmers' Union praising the philosophy but cautious about the real detail.
There's a lot of announcements to be welcomed within the transition plan that's been announced this morning, but we're really keen to see the detail and the payments. So farmers currently receive the BPS payment now on an annual basis, and that has been stated that will reduce over the 4 years to 2024 and beyond. We would like to see how that can come in, what the farmers need to be able to do and what they need to deliver to access that funding, because it's so vital for their businesses.
With so much so vague, even farmers like James Rebanks, who are convinced they can make it work, have real misgivings about the coming years of massive financial transition.
There's a lot of vagueness in those announcements that have been happening in the last 24 hours. We don't know what they're going to pay for, how much they're going to pay. So I, as a farmer, I'm looking around my farm, I don't know what to plan for. Some of my breeding operations have 3 or 5 year breeding cycles. What am I breeding for? I don't know. Am I breeding for You know, what system am I going to be in a year's time, in 2 years' time, in 5 years' time? There's so much detail to be worked out.
The new system aims then to reward farmers like those in Matterdale who encourage wildlife. The old EU system did the opposite. The larger your farm, the more intensive your farming, the more money you got. Environmental catastrophe was incentivised. But one announcement is tellingly clear. Today's blueprint may well mean fewer farmers. Among the proposals are sunset payments for those unable or unwilling to transform.
Well, joining me now is Minette Batters, President of the National Farmers Union, which represents more than 55,000 farmers across England and Wales. Thank you very much for coming on the programme, Minette Batters. So, George Eustice is a farmer. His father was a farmer, his grandfather was a farmer, and his vision is that of turning, giving the land back to the English people, making it more green, making it more pleasant while keeping you guys in business. Do you buy into that vision?
Well, we do, and we've worked very closely with George Eustice as Secretary of State for DEFRA to develop a sustainable food and farming scheme. And you heard James Rebanks and David Hall talk very positively about the ambition that we all share. But you also heard that right now it's the detail that is missing, and that's what farmers want to know. Those monies that are taken away, up to 50% by 2024, how will they be reinvested back into the new schemes, and what does that look like?
But the biggest cuts, as far as I understand, will be for the bigger farms that can most afford those cuts. So it's good for small farmers.
It doesn't actually work like that, because it might be a smaller amount of payment that is coming in for a smaller farming business, but can be even more critical to that farming business. And looking at the farm business income figures for both upland and lowland livestock, you can see between 60 and 80% fall in farm business income. Now that's going to be massive. That's why we need the detail on what these schemes will look like and how that money will be reinvested back into farming businesses to deliver public monies for public goods.
I mean, this is a time of great upheaval. Do you think the timing of this revolution, George Eustice called it an evolution, is correct? Is now the time to do this?
The government has been very clear that it wanted to move to public monies for public goods. What we believe, though, is that you have to have this symbiotic relationship between food production and environmental delivery. It cannot be an either or. We as the National Farmers Union set the ambition to deliver net zero, to effectively deliver carbon neutral food by 2040. This scheme, I hope, will enable farmers to do that, because that means taking a really fresh approach to sustainable farming, focusing on new innovation, new R&D, sustainable living, as well as sustainable food. We have the chance, and we really need to work very closely with government. It cannot afford to fail. That is one thing that cannot happen.
But there are two realities here, aren't there? There's the reality of the cuts, and the schemes that he has proposed, and then there's the reality of a Brexit deal, or no deal for that matter. How bad would it be for your sector, for the farming sector, if there is no deal?
I've been very clear now for 4 years that a no-deal scenario for agriculture, for food in this country, is catastrophic. I mean, quite simply, we would be priced out of the marketplace. You'd be looking at 62% tariff on lamb, 85 on beef, 44 on cheddar as an example, 51 on barley. We will be priced out of that market. And it is our closest and most valuable trading partner, worth 14.5 billion for UK agriculture. If you compare that to our second closest trading partner, which is in fact the US currently, that market is worth 2.2 billion. And further, to bring it into context, if you take Japan and Canada, they are only 4% of the value of the EU market. So it's a critical market, both for imports and for exports.
And do you agree that it's right to kind of place so much emphasis on fisheries, and the kind of mythical importance of our waters around our island, when that could spell the end of a deal and therefore ruin for so many farmers?
Well, it's not just about farming, it's the economy as a whole, isn't it? I think sometimes what gets forgotten perhaps is that fishermen need the EU market. We sell the vast proportion of our fish into the EU, so we need a comprehensive deal. We need a free and frictionless deal for all sectors. that is very clear. We just have to make sure that that happens. I don't see any positives in a no deal scenario.
But in one line, are we indulging the fishermen here? Yes or no?
Look, I represent farmers. I don't represent fishermen. I shall fight for my sector and make sure they get the best deal possible and leave the fishermen to fight for their sector that they know so well.